So let's talk about teachers. We all think we know what a teacher is, right? But what really goes into it? What's the anatomy of a great teacher? We're going to break it down today, and it's way more complex and fascinating than you might think. Okay, let's start with a quick thought experiment. Just for a second, when I say the word teacher, what's the very first thing, the first image that pops into your head? Go with your gut.
Yeah, for a lot of us, it's these things, isn't it? Apples, a stack of books, maybe a dusty chalkboard. They're kind of the classic symbols, the shorthand we all use for the profession.
But here's the thing, those images barely scratch the surface. The reality of teaching is this incredible, dynamic mix of knowledge, skill, and just who you are as a person. And we're going to unpack all of it.
So, first things first, let's talk about the foundational toolkit. Think of these as the absolute must-have building blocks. Every single effective teacher needs to have these in their back pocket.
And this toolkit really boils down to three core parts. You need to be proficient in the language you're teaching in. You obviously need to know your subject matter, that's the content knowledge. And you need a set of core practical skills for actually running a classroom.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. See, content knowledge isn't just one thing. There's disciplinary knowledge, that's the what. It's being an expert in physics or history. But the real secret sauce is pedagogical content knowledge. That's the how. It's knowing how to take all that expert stuff and make it click for someone who's never seen it before. There was even a study that found teachers with a literature background literally saw a poem differently, not just as words, but as a series of teaching opportunities. That is the how in action.
And this difference really shows up when you look at skills. A brand new teacher, they're often in survival mode, They're sticking to that lesson plan for dear life. But an expert? Well, they've done the basics so many times it's automatic. That frees up their brain to improvise, to read the room, and to make those game-changing decisions on the fly.
Okay, so once the teacher has that toolkit down, what's next? Well, now comes the art of adaptation. This is all about taking that knowledge and making it work in the real, messy, unpredictable world of an actual classroom. Just listen to this quote from a teacher in Egypt. It's so revealing, right? It shows how culture can completely shape what it means to be a teacher. In this context, the teacher sees their role as doing all the heavy lifting, basically learning for the students.
And then you get this totally different perspective from a teacher in China. Here, a lesson that's super interactive and communicative, something that might be praised elsewhere, could actually be seen as lazy, like the teacher didn't bother to plan. It just completely flips the script on what good looks like.
All these cross-cultural examples point to one massive takeaway. There is no one-size-fits-all definition of good teaching. It's always shaped by a specific culture, a specific context. What's brilliant in one classroom might totally fall flat in another. And this leads us to the super complex idea of a teacher's identity. You can kind of think about it in three layers. First, there's your personal identity, all the stuff you bring with you, like your background and experiences. Second is the identity that gets built with your students in that specific classroom. And third is your professional identity, how you see yourself as part of the bigger world of education. One of the biggest signs of a teacher's growth is this shift in focus. Are you all about your plan, or are you all about your learners? There's a great saying that a bad lesson is one that follows the plan perfectly, because it means you ignored the real people in the room. A great lesson is when you almost reinvent on the spot, based on what's actually happening.
All right, now we're getting to the top tier, the master's craft. This isn't just about skills anymore. It's about a special kind of thinking, a higher order cognition that really sets the experts apart.
So to get a feel for this, try this challenge. Imagine you walk into a classroom. You have 50 minutes to teach, and the only thing you have is a glass of water. That's it. What do? What's your lesson?
An expert teacher's mind just ignites. They don't see a glass of water, they see a container. And that one word sparks a whole lesson. Brainstorming other containers, grouping them, having students present their ideas, and then maybe even a role play about borrowing one. They just spun a whole rich lesson out of thin air.
That amazing ability, it has a name. It's called pedagogical reasoning, and it's the absolute core cognitive skill of teaching. It's being able to look at almost anything and see its hidden potential as a learning experience.
And here's a huge piece of the puzzle. Experts don't just take theories from a book and apply them top-down. They do something way more powerful. They build their own theories, bottom-up, from their own experience. They figure out what actually works
and create their own guiding principles. This is the kind of thing that comes from that process, a personal principle like every child is a winner. Now, that's not just some fluffy saying. For a teacher who really believes that, it's a rule book. It guides every single interaction, every decision they make in the classroom.
Okay, for our last section, let's zoom all the way out. Because a teacher is not an island. They exist and grow as part of a much larger professional ecosystem.
We tend to think of teaching as this solo performance, right? But the real growth happens when teachers are part of a community of practice. That means they're actively working together, team teaching, watching each other's classes, planning as a group. It's about sharing the wisdom, not figuring it all out on your own.
And being a professional is actually a two-way street. You've got the top-down stuff, the standards and requirements that the institution sets. But just as important, if not more so, is the bottom-up drive, the teacher's own hunger to learn and get better on their own terms.
So, when you put all these pieces together, the toolkit, the adaptation, the master's craft, the community, you see that a teacher's development is a journey that never, ever ends. Which really just leaves one last question for all of us to think about. What's your next step?